All right, so here we go. Algebra 2B, working on the quiz, changing from standard form to vertex form for our quadratic equations. And in this video, I'm going to do the even problems, 2, 4, and 6. And I'm going to use completing the square. So first thing we want to remember is for our vertex form, this is what it looks like. And the nice thing is that A is automatically the same value as A in standard form. So if I jump down, hopefully I can squeeze this in at the bottom. I know it's already going to be 3 times the parentheses x with something, adding or subtracting something squared, and then adding or subtracting something after that. So if you're completing the square, you got to remember the steps. So step 1 is you do b divided by a. This is the way that I do it. It's different than the way that most people learn it, but to me it's a little bit easier. But b divided by a is your first step. And so in this case, b is 24, 24x, bx, and we're dividing by 3, so that's 8. Step 2 is you take that result and you divide by 2. And so that gives you 4. Now this is big because that's what's in the parentheses. It's a positive 4. This is the number in the parentheses. Now, it's tricky because you're like, hey, isn't it minus h? But yeah, but here it's not. It's just, if you get a positive, you say plus 4. If you get a negative, you say minus 4. We got a positive 4, so it's going to be plus 4 in the parentheses. And I go, okay, so then what else is there? Well, this is a little tricky, actually. Step 3, yeah, I might not have enough room here. We'll have to see. Step 3 says, you square that result. You take your previous result, you square it. And so that 4 squared is going to give you 16. And then step 4 says you multiply by a. So what color can I use here? We'll go red. Step 4 says you take that result and you multiply it by a. So 16 times a, that's 16 times 3, which is 48. Okay, so I got a little more work to do. And you can make your own choice. Right now I'm thinking the other way is easier. Just find the axis of symmetry. That's your x value for the vertex. Find the y value of the vertex. A is the same. Put it all into the equation. 48 is what, quote unquote, completes the square. So if we come back up to the original here now, we'd have, so what I want to do is I want to say y equals 3x squared plus 24x. We'll see if I can squeeze this in. Well, I got the 48, but I'll just do this here. Plus 48 is what completes the square. That's the result I got. But now remember, I don't want to change things. So if I'm going to add 48, but I don't want to change things, then I can also subtract 48 because that's essentially 0. But then I've still got the plus 48 that I originally had. So this might seem a little strange. You might just say, hey, we already had the plus 48. Why don't you just keep the plus 48? But it's a general process. All right, so here's what happens. This right there, 3x squared plus 24x plus 48 becomes this. 3 times the parentheses, x plus 4 squared. Okay, and then outside that, I'm going to switch up my colors here, but outside that, the minus 48 that we needed to compensate for the plus 48 that we brought in stays outside the parentheses. So this would become y equals 3 times x plus 4 squared. And then the minus 48 and the plus 48, that's 0. And you don't have to say plus 0. So we can stop right here. So yeah, it might seem complicated. Again, it's up to you whether or not you want to do like I did on the video, 1, 3, and 5. Find the axis of symmetry, find the y value of the vertex, put in a, put in h, put in k, and you got your equation, and don't forget to check. But if you want to challenge yourself and learn this thing called completing the square, that's it. And so I'll do a check step like I do in the other video with that. But number 4 here, again, if I want to just get started right off the bat, I could say, hey, my vertex form, it's going to be a is negative 5. It's the same value of a in both equations, times in the parentheses x plus or minus something, and the parentheses are squared, and then we got plus or minus something outside the parentheses. So if I figure out, all right, what's going to go in the parentheses with x, my first step here b divided by a. So that is 90, positive 90 divided by a is negative 5, and that is negative 18, I believe. Oh boy. Let's grab the calculator real quick because I don't feel confident. 90 divided by negative 5. 90 divided by 5 is 18. 90 divided by 5 would be negative 18. Okay, so it's negative 18. Step 2 for this process. Whoops. Step 2 for this process. Oh boy, sorry, I'm struggling with my word processor right now. Here we go. Step 2 for the process says we're going to take the result of the previous step and we are going to divide by 2. The 2 is part of the formula. So take the previous result, divide by 2. So negative 18 divided by 2, which is negative 9. And that's the number in the parentheses. Now, again, it's you got to be careful here because normally it's, x minus h. But here it's just like whatever you get in step 2, you put that in. If it's a positive, you say plus. If it's a negative, you say minus. X minus 9 in the parentheses. We got to figure what's going to go outside the parentheses. So what else do we have here? Step 3 says we're going to square the result. So we take that negative 9, we square it. We get positive 81. And then step 4 says we multiply that result by a. So 81 times a, 81 times negative 5. I believe that is negative 405. Okay. So we still got to figure out what's outside the parentheses here. What's being added or subtracted with the parentheses. So this is where that negative 405 completes the square, quote unquote. So here we go. So we're going to say, if I can, here, I'll try to kind of cordon that off a little bit. So we're going to say y equals the negative 5x squared plus 90x. Now, if I had a minus 405, what can happen here is this part will become negative 5 times x minus 9 squared, which is great because that's part of Vertex form. But I go, but if I'm going to bring in subtraction of 405, I got to compensate that. I can't just subtract 405. I'm going to compensate that. So this completes the square, but then I'm going to add 405 to compensate and be like, hey, I took away $405, but let me give you $405. And it compensates. But then we have another $405 that's already there. And I got to go, you can't forget about that. So it's plus another, if I can squeeze that in, plus another 405. So the minus 405 gets kind of sucked into the parentheses. The plus 405 that I had to use to compensate combines with the other plus 405, which makes then, I believe that is 810. That's a 405. Doesn't look great, but that's 810. So that plus 810, that gets put on my answer. And I'm definitely going to check this one. And I got my answer. It's got a lot of different colors on it, but that's okay. So that's me changing number 4, standard form, completing the square, that method, the way that I do it, to come up with Vertex form. All right, we'll do one more, and then I'll probably come back and I'll probably check number 4 because those numbers I'm a little bit nervous about. But all right, number 6, first thing here. I think we talked about this in class, but if you don't like f of x, you can just replace that with y. You can just completely replace f of x with y. So you can say y equals x squared plus 20x minus 19 if you prefer that, if you like that better. But when we're building up our answer, again, if you go back up or if you're looking at your notes, Vertex form, y equals a, or in this case, I guess technically it's f of x equals a times all the rest of that. I'll stick with f of x, but a is the same in standard form as it is in Vertex form, so that's good news. And in this case, it's 1x squared, so it is going to be f of x. You can say 1 times the parentheses if you want to, but remember, you don't have to tell me 1 times anything. If you want to say 1 times the parentheses, great, good for you, but you don't have to. You can just say, hey, we're going to have the parentheses. X is going to be in the parentheses. There's going to be something added or subtracted. We're going to square it, and then there's going to be something added or subtracted perhaps after that. So we got to figure out what's in the parentheses with x and what are we adding or subtracting after that. So here come the 4 steps of completing the square. Step number 1, b divided by a. So here we've got 20 for b divided by 1 for a. That's 20. Step number 2, take that result and take half of it divided by 2. And that's going to be a positive 10. And that goes in the parentheses. Plus 10 is in the parentheses. Okay. Step number 3, I'll go purple here. Step number 3, you square your result. So 10 squared is 100. And step number 4, you take that result and you multiply by a. So 100 multiplied by a. A was 1, so that's 100 times 1, which is 100. Okay, so 100 completes the square. Quote unquote completes the square. So if we look at this, if I say, all right, so f of x, again, I'll partition this off here. F of x equals x squared plus 20x. If I had plus 100, this would be what we call a perfect square trinomial. That would be x plus 10 in the parentheses squared. But I go, okay, but I'm just throwing that plus 100 in there. It wasn't there. That plus 100 wasn't there. So I got to compensate for it, which means I'm going to also subtract 100 to compensate, to make up for adding 100, because these essentially would be 0. But then I go, but then there was also a minus 19 that was part of the original. So I can't ignore that. I got to include that minus 19. All right. Whoops. What happened here? So that plus 100 kind of gets quote unquote sucked into the parentheses squared. The minus 100 floats around and combines with the minus 19. And those combined give you the minus 100 and the minus 19 give you minus 119. So that's what we're putting there, minus 119. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check here. I'm going to go back to number 4 and I'm going to check. And if you watch the other video, I don't do the completing the square with 1, 3, and 5. And again, it's up to you. But I'm going to check number 2 here, number 4 rather, excuse me, the second one I did. I'm going to check this. And I'm going to say, hey, I did some great work, I feel like. But let's check this. So let's take our answer in Vertex form and let's change it to standard form. And just like I did on the other video, I'm going to do some of this work. I'm going to do a little quickly. And you might need to do some of it on, separate sheet of paper or something like that. But yeah, just that 810 is making me nervous. All right. So as always, follow order of operations as best you can. X minus 9, can't do anything with that, but we can do the exponent. We can square this. So this would be y equals negative 5. If you square the parentheses, however you do it, you can do the box method. You can do the FOIL method. You might know the binomial expansion formula. It's the first thing squared. If you want to chop slash this, plus 2 times the first thing times the second thing. So 2 times x times negative 9 is a negative 18x, plus the second thing squared. Negative 9 squared is positive 81. And then we've got the plus 810 is sitting around waiting for its turn in the order of operations. So we couldn't do the parentheses, but we could do the exponent. Now we can multiply, we can distribute. 5 times negative 5 rather, times x squared is negative 5x squared. Negative 5 times negative 18 is positive 90x. And negative 5 times, whoops, too far. Negative 5 times 81 is negative 405. And then the plus 810 is waiting its turn. So y equals all of that plus 810. And then let's see here. We can combine some like terms here. So I owe 5 apple pies, no other apple pies, no other x squareds. I've got 90 apples, no other x's, but minus 405 and plus 810 combine to be plus 405. So unless I'm doing mental math, unless I'm making a mistake, that matches the original. This right here matches the original that I had. So I feel good about my answer. Y equals negative 5 times x minus 9 in the parentheses squared plus 810. Did the check step. Feel good.